I do remember that. And
It will be soon. Oh, boy.
yeah, do you remember that? Unfortunately, they meet everything.
That's why we're talking today.
And we are live. All right, then coming back to you, YouTube. Just so you know, 8:25 p.m. We are back in session. Our next is a public hearing, which is an application by the City of Middleton for an amendment and revision to the following Middleton City Code sections: Middleton City Code 1-3-1, 4-4, 4-5-11. 5-4-1 of Table 1 and 5-4-4. Roberta will be hearing this public hearing tonight.
We will, Mr. Chairman. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Staff report, please. I will open this public hearing at 8:26 p.m.
Thank you. So, remember this, two
Oh, God.
months ago, I was told to bring this back to you in a month. It took me 2 months, but I'm here. So we're gonna do just a quick couple of code updates. This is a duplex in the older section of downtown Middleton, very close to where we just discussed in Jenica's last project. And I had brought it in as a special use permit and then realized at the last minute that duplexes on a single lot undergo no review whatsoever. Although if it was a duplex on 2 lots, with a common party wall, then it does undergo review. It was just a glitch in the code. I'll blame the previous planner. And so all it took is to change some wording in the use table. And originally it says multifamily dwelling exceeding 2 or more dwellings, so 3 or more, has to undergo S, the special use permit under multifamily. Can you see that? So all I did was strike exceeding and just wrote multifamily dwelling 2 or more dwellings. Now that's going to capture these homes, and you'll have a chance to review them and do something about it. So, likewise, just cleaning up the definition code. Our code has a very big section with all kinds of definitions for terms that will be used throughout the rest of the code. And one of the terms in there was dwelling, 2-family. I'm sure 10, 20 years ago, it actually attached to a different code section, which is long gone. It doesn't attach to anything, so I'm just cleaning it up right now and striking it. It's confusing too. So, this is exciting. Things are changing in cities across America, and a kind of a new hybrid product is coming forth that's generally called flex space or a flex building. And these kinds of spaces are a hybrid mixture of light industrial product mixed with like commercial, retail, and office. And they generally have a highly enhanced front elevation, pretty on the front, very ugly on the rear. The rear will be roll-up doors, alleyways, truck traffic, warehousing, light distribution on the backside. And these little flex space projects will allow you to have different uses together. Like you might have a custom cabinet shop right next door to a CrossFit gym, and right next door to a nice indoor-outdoor restaurant. And it's truly a twilight zone between industrial uses and commercial uses. They live together very nicely in this kind of flex space use. But in any city, and Middleton included, you cannot add a new kind of hybrid use without first defining it, and then you have to drop it into the use table, and then you have to apply. Well, let's change here. First of all, let's look more at some other flex spaces. Here's some other pictures too. You'll see pretty on the front, kind of looks retail. Sometimes it'll look office, but on the back, it's just industrial. Maybe tilt-up walls, concrete walls, metal, lots of doors. So first what we have to do here is define flex space, and then once we define it, then we drop it into the use table and we say how it can live in the various zones, or if it can even live in any of the zones. And you probably know how to use a use table, but if you see an A, that means it's an allowed use. You don't have to do anything. You can come right in, it's allowed. If you see an S, you have to come before the Planning and Zoning Commission for a special use permit. If you don't see anything in the square, that means it's strictly prohibited. You cannot have that use in that zone. That's how you use a use table. So let's go backwards now. This is the proposed definition for flex space. A building used for small-scale warehousing and light industrial activity combined with office, retail, and/or other commercial uses. Individual units or buildings may be used entirely for commercial, retail, or office, but any warehousing and/or light industrial use cannot exceed 70% of the total square footage of the building or individual unit. Flex space does not include mini warehouse storage, individual storage space for rent, or uses that involve a high level of truck and loading activity. So some people might want to get this use and come in for design review, but they're just going to stuff it full of storage units. And that's not good. So we're going to prevent that in this definition. And also, you need to call out the fact that there really should not be a lot of truck activity here. A little bit. The FedEx guy comes through, maybe a small little light truck will drop off some wood or whatever, but not much. Second paragraph, front and side elevations are enhanced with more architectural detail, including variations in roof form, building height, and building materials, in addition to an increased use of glass and architectural features involving wood, faux wood, and/or metal. Entries are easily identifiable with projecting or recessed forms and additional architectural detail. So it would look more like a nice strip mall. You know which storefronts go to which stores. Loading docks and industrial roll-up garage doors are located on only the rear and non-street sides of the flex space. However, glass sliding doors and architectural garage doors enhanced with significant amounts of glass, metal, and/or faux wood can be located on the front elevation if it enhances the aesthetic of the front elevation. And the commission will be the one to make sure that this gets done, because you'll see these in design review. They'll come only to you. I'm going to go back and show you a good example.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
So this first example is a prime example. Like these look like storefront, but they could just as well be really nice glass garage doors. As long as it looks nice, it has to be pretty on the front. Can be ugly in the back, but pretty on the front. Okay, so in the land use table, this is perfect for heavy, medium to heavy commercial, because there's a little light industrial involved, and it's also very appropriate for our light industrial and our heavy industrial. So I'm putting an A in C2, C3, M1, and M2. Prohibited in C1, that's light commercial. Neighborhood commercial, that's places where you have a little coffee shop or you have a little fitness center. It's an intimate little neighborhood place. You don't want light industrial there.
Is most of Main Street C2?
Some of Main Street is C2, but in time, most of Main Street will be C3.
Okay.
Yeah, C1 is going to be a little pocket commercial in real residential areas. So I think it should be strictly prohibited there, but you have a right to say, no, maybe it should be allowed there. That's up to you guys. You'll see in MU, there on the right, there's an S for special use permit. So the mixed use zone is a zone where we can mix usually high density residential like townhomes or apartments mixed with other commercial uses. They all live together. There's a little bit of that here in the city. And I think personally flex space would probably work there. Could be like a little avant-garde type place where I could see young professionals loving to live in this kind of semi-industrial warehouse stuff, you know, like New York, Brooklyn or something. But then again, I pose the question to you. There's residential in mixed use, and maybe light industrial just should not be there.
Well,
I just don't know.
I think regardless of the term light industrial, we have to understand that the purpose of the business and of a flex space, and of what you've presented me so far, my understanding of a flex space is going to be something similar to like a strip mall.
It can be,
Right.
yeah. You know, it can look retail, but it can look
One of the
office.
requirements was that it can't be more than 70% industrial per space or per building, right? I think that verbiage needs to change, because it's going to be like if I have multiple units, is it 75% of the building or 70% of that specific unit?
Building or unit. If every unit never exceeds 70%, then the building can't exceed when it's, would not exceed 70%, once built out.
Right, so like if I'm
So-
a custom cabinet guy, right?
Mhm.
Obviously 70% of my whole unit could be,
No,
as long as it doesn't equal 70% of the total structure.
in your unit,
What is
and you
Right.
would probably, you could use 70% in the back as an ugly cement warehouse with rolls of wood or carpet and milling activity, but the front needs to be pretty.
That's great, I understand that, but that means the unit I'm renting, in order for my business as a cabinet maker, making me light industrial,
Can only be 70%
of my
warehousing
unit
of your unit.
can only be 70% light industrial.
30% is gonna be greeting the public,
Mhm.
reception area, offices,
Right.
and it will look
Now,
like
come on
a,
back.
and then
Where
the
I
back
do
is all
work,
like.
here's where I present my work, right?
Yep.
The nice space, here's where I present my work, here's where I do my work.
And I looked at other codes, and 70% was generally what other cities in the Treasure Valley would say to split it at.
Okay, but here's my other thing. If we're now looking at that verbiage and I have 10 units and I have 10 units that are at 70% light industrial, that's more than 70% of the entire structure, right? So I built this nice thing that's supposed to go maybe with a special use permit into a mixed use building. And now I have nothing but light industrial in there. They have a storefront, so I can show you what they do. But now every unit in there is working in the back. It's not presenting the same. I don't think the
And that's
idea
okay.
is, I don't think that idea of fixed exact what flex space should be used at. I'm like, if you're gonna do all industrial, you need to take your buoy down there to C3. It shouldn't be in a special use permit anyway.
So no unit can be all industrial. The
Correct.
light warehousing part can only constitute 70% of a single unit. So even if every unit is 70% warehousing and light distribution in the backside, the whole building overall will never get past 70%. But that's the point. The point of it is that each individual unit can have the messy, cabinet making in the back, but it will still be a very attractive building on the front. And that's
If we're
why
not
you
gonna
have
put a
this
leash on
product.
it by saying more than 70% of the building itself, if I build a nice strip mall and every single one of them's industrial, they don't belong in a special use permit and mixed use. Then we
So-
shouldn't even offer to put them in there if they could build that. If we're not doing something to mitigate this becoming all light industrial, it should not be in mixed use with a special use.
Do I hear you guys saying the same thing?
I don't think so.
No.
Because if you have, each one of these is an individual item of approval. So if it is that individual item is 70%, what we're
Right.
talking about, then that would delineate the whole thing from being more than that.
Not if
So-
each unit is now light industrial. If I have 10 units and 10 cabinet makers coming in, rent all 10 units, right? Now they're all light industrial.
There's nothing wrong with that, that's the intention of it.
I know, but I'm saying, why would we place something now that we're not, we're allowing to be all light industrial? If that's okay, if that's what happens, I don't think it would fall under a mixed use. I don't wanna put a light industrial complex next to my now apartment complex.
Actually, in reality, probably most of them would be a more light industrial use in there. It would be a rare thing to have a CrossFit gym in there. That would be the rare thing. Most people in there are gonna be light industrial. That's
What about
what this
restaurants?
product is
Restaurants
for.
light industrial?
What was that?
Restaurants aren't light industrial.
No, but you can mix them in there, but that would be rare. It would be mostly light industrial. That's the point
Then
of this
there's no
product.
point to having a S under mixed use, that's my opinion. If it's gonna be, if the primary purpose of having, because what you presented me and what you're telling me are not making sense in my head.
Well, the mixed
If I'm
use.
gonna have a restaurant and a gym and places to go hang out with a coffee shop, that makes sense to have in a mixed use. But if I can have all light industrial and there's nothing to tell me I can't, I'm just gonna turn it into industrial space anyways. It doesn't belong within a family area. It should not be put in a.
I see what you're saying.
Commercial.
I didn't know you were talking about strictly mixed use. I'm sorry. Yeah, and that was
Yeah.
my question.
And that's where I'm just trying to stay right under mixed use.
Yeah, I think it's fine either way you guys choose. There's gonna be residential people living in a mixed use zone, and so this may not be an appropriate product for it.
So I guess then my question would be through the staff and the attorney, is there a way to mitigate in a mixed use? If we were to keep it there with a special use permit, if they come and tell me, hey, this is what's gonna happen, I'm gonna build this pool flex complex, what regulations or what requirements by, what authority do we have then to say, well, I understand that based on our code, it can't be 70% more per unit, but because you're in a special use permit, we would like to say that you can't be more than 70% for your entire business. Your entire structure can't be more than 70%.
So what would you propose in the language?
That's what I'm trying to say. Like, how do we, where do we put a leash on? You
So
wanna put it
maybe
in
you add a
mixed use?
second
I think you're
sentence
talking
that
about the
precludes the whole.
types of businesses,
Mhm.
and she's talking about the use of the building. And so you're saying you don't want more than 70% of the unit to be leased to light industrial businesses.
Right. So that's what I was trying to,
She's saying 70% of the unit
right.
can't be used for more than,
So you need,
Light
you
industrial.
need an A and a B
and so you've got,
to satisfy
so
both.
yeah, I understand what we're saying.
I totally
even
get what
I
we're saying.
understand what
Each
you're
unit
saying.
itself is 70%. That means the whole structure is more than 70% light industrial, which then does not fit
Well, no,
in a
yes.
multifamily area, in a
More than
multi-use.
70% light industrial usage, like businesses, but not usage of the unit, not
So if
usage
you-
of the space.
If you don't like this product,
Yeah.
then we just don't put flex space in and nobody could do it. This product, even if a project went in and every single unit had 70% industrial, that's what this product's for.
Well, I'm just saying.
If you don't like that, then we
product is
don't do
fine.
it.
That product is fine, but that product shouldn't be in a mixed-use area.
And then, and that would be the question, I don't know,
But
I
if we're
could go
talking
either
flex
way.
space, let's really talk about flex space.
But if-
Albertsons is a flex space. Albertsons is right next to a frickin' Ross, right? So you have Ross and Albertsons, and right next to that is a shoe store with a restaurant and a coffee shop. That's the use of flex space. That makes sense in a mixed-use area. None of them are light industrial, or they could be light industrial. Then you start talking Bed Bath & Beyond and a strip mall with a Verizon store. Now we're talking about flex space. We're talking about how you're properly using a mini mall or a strip mall.
So the flex space that
That's
we're,
different than, right? Okay, now I
that
got
we're
a cabin
dividing
shop.
here is really for light industrial. That
Okay, then
this
it
is
doesn't belong
the
in
term of
mixed
art
use, in my
we're
opinion,
using
but-
for light industrial. I don't know what other cities are gonna do or say or flex in someone's mind. We are making a distinct definition that flex space can be up to 70% industrial, every single unit.
And we're
That's this
just,
definition.
we're just recommending for approval or denial of the city council, right?
You're just recommending.
Yeah, so we're just hearing this, making recommendations, so we can have one of our recommendations be,
Yeah.
we don't think.
Take it out of MU or whatever.
Yeah,
So I guess
So
I
we
have
have to
another
make a
question. What is
decision.
that business downtown called that has like this tractor underneath? What is that called?
oh, jump,
Jump?
Jump is a flex space, right?
No.
no,
No?
it's-
It is actually a community organization.
Yeah.
Okay,
type.
cause there's guys in
Yeah.
there doing like blacksmithing, which is all light industrial, they're cutting with torches and all crazy stuff, and right
It's
up there,
Simpson.
I'm going to the beer barn, right? And then I'm going back down to watch the dude cut
They
steel.
they are a space for
It's
use
Simplot.
Okay,
by organizations that are generally
paying for
nonprofit.
each unit, right?
No. They
Somebody's
are-
paying for it.
It's
well,
a charity building.
The only places I've seen
But-
are what people rent or utilize
So that's not
for special
an example of
things.
what flex space would be used like.
I've only seen about 3/4 of the building,
Okay.
but
I
I
think
don't
we
know.
just-
I'm trying to understand, because if the potential is to be all industrial anyway, why are we putting it in, even have an option for special use permit?
Yeah.
yeah, I think we could just, when we do our recommendation, we could just make that.
Decide whether you.
So
Comment.
say a
We
hypothetical
could
of
just
what
make
that
that
would,
comment.
where would we find ourselves in a position like that?
It was a concern of mine too.
I don't know.
But I just didn't know.
So let's say,
So I'm not
what's
sure I fully
the
understand.
what's the
what-
park thing we're talking about down there? My brain is fried right now, I've been traveling for like 2 months. So, down here, what's the
Riverwalk. you mean?
Riverwalk, right? Do you see a place at Riverwalk where somebody could be doing a custom thing, right? There's a weld shop in Boise, in Garden City, right? Where they do just welding, and right next door is a restaurant and a beer garden. And it's called Iron Woman, right? Because it's all women work in this shop, and they do all the iron cutting and all of this stuff,
Yeah.
right? So it's a big thing for them. It's a
Yeah.
cool, and it's awesome. They even have a beer bar in there,
Yeah.
which is nice. But So I'm trying to understand, I guess, the true definition of what flex space is, and I don't think we have it yet. I think, me personally, I don't have a grasp of what that means yet to tell you or give you any definition.
Well, do you?
If I'm looking at flex space like that picture up there, and I look at the description of it, how it talks about gyms next door to a restaurant, to things like that, that explains to me what a flex space means. If you're telling me it's all industrial, that's not a flex space and it needs to go away. Flex space doesn't even describe what the space we're using in my head compared to how it's described, and then its intended use as put out, it's not flex space. So I think the definition of flex space doesn't match our use in that.
All right, then that might be part of your motion.
Right, redefine flex space.
I think the definition's fine, I think your hang-up is just whether or not it belongs in mixed use.
If you're looking at a purpose definition of flex space, a building used for small scale warehousing and light industrial activity combined with office, retail, and other commercial uses. So restaurants and things like that, restaurants and the Verizon store, right? So it sounds to me more like we're combining, when you're talking about flex space and you describe it like that, there's more than just light industrial going on. It's not all cabin there.
Does flex space have to be industrial?
That's what I mean, like, what is the
What if it's
definition of flex
residential
space?
on top and retail down below?
Is that a
So
flex
that's
space?
mixed use.
To me, that's flex space.
It's used, this,
Oh, that's
it is
multi-use.
used primarily for industrial because, I mean, you can do commercial, we have commercial zones. You can do industrial zones, we have industrial zones. This is allowing somebody to buy one unit that has a messy business in the back, but needs it pretty clean in the front and needs an attractive veneer.
That's every business,
No, it's
Well,
not.
no,
Look
it's
at
not
Blue
retail.
Steel.
I mean,
right? Well,
Look
Blue
at
Steel's
Blue
up there
Steel.
all the way around, but if you go downtown anywhere, you go to a storefront anywhere, the storefront looks nice, and they got the smoking truck in the back, the dripping oil in the driveway, because they're trying to load fish as fast as they can. So it's always business up front and ugly in the rear.
Mr. Chairman, this is about industrial uses.
Okay.
Letting them live in a nicer area where they normally be relegated to out there at rural steel. But it's ugly. And the public doesn't wanna go out there. This allows a kind of a hybrid zone for them to bring their light industrial into a prettier area. The city will allow it. As so long as their light industrial doesn't get too out of control, and it only amounts to 70% of their unit.
well, this is actually very
The
common.
deli shop.
Yeah,
This type of space is very common everywhere.
It's becoming more and more
explain to me
common.
then what a flex space is. If
For
you've
me,
seen this
the
area,
way-
you know
the
what
way
it
you
is.
describe it
That's-
to me
Right now,
now
my
is-
hang up is we're not describing flex space.
Let me answer.
Okay.
Okay,
Flex space to me is, it could be,
Right, let him answer there.
Oh.
I just cut him off twice already. I'm gonna,
that's okay.
Go ahead, sorry.
Because I do it all the time myself. The way I see it is that you have a business community that's mixing in with a residential community and have them like each other and be good neighbors. And it happens. It's beneficial to a lot of neighborhoods to have the flex space next to them. Could be, gym, could be, whatever, could be, people like that. So you have Costco next to a CBH community. They love it.
that's
They're
not flex
right
space,
down the
that's
road.
all, that's,
But
Costco is
my
what?
point is you've got neighbors that are getting along with each other in different, they're not all residential or not all business. I'm just seeing it as that way, with a nice front. It fits in with the neighborhood, just across the street from it, and it's very common.
I just think industrial is the purpose of this. It doesn't belong in a mixed use. If I'm a neighbor, if there's a Quiznos in there, you know what I mean? Like, I'm probably gonna get along better with that flex space that's going on down there.
I just think if you exclude it, you're doing yourself a favor.
Yeah, I agree.
it's an S.
It
You're
gives
right.
you, this gives you an option.
We're probably not even done with what your presentation is, so we probably,
No, we gotta
No,
go.
I wanted to stop and talk about it. That's why I put the question
I
there.
bet you didn't expect this.
Well, that's-
No, I think I hear what you're saying, but I tend to partially agree and partially disagree. Because like I just said, they're all over the place. Go to Portland. I mean, not that we wanna be like Portland.
No.
But even in Boise and places like that,
Yeah.
you have a lot of mixed use next to residential. And a lot of the residential customers, especially those who live in apartments, like having that stuff in proximity to them because it's easier to shop.
You're talking about shopping though, we're talking about retail and distribution, we're talking about industrial over here. That's a totally different thing. I'm with you that a flex space should have like a retail, I could go buy clothes, I could go to the Nike store, and the guy over there is making cabinets, and that person's doing some welding. That to me makes flex space. But if 70% of this whole complex is industrial, it's not flex, it's industrial, and it doesn't belong in mixed use.
I think that's what we just put in our motion, the city
Okay.
council, who has ultimate
I
decision.
understand.
I just think if we define it well enough,
That's what I'm saying. Like, that comes back to my original question, is I don't think we are defining flex space if we're just calling it industrial.
well,
Our
I
definition of flex space is
I
wrong.
didn't finish my.
Sorry.
I think that it will vet itself out. And I think that if you don't have this option, I think that it would be limiting us in our ability to do certain things.
Yeah.
But that's
Okay.
just my own thought. In realistic, I guess in worst case scenario, I could see what, you're talking about.
Yeah,
But I think realistically, it's not gonna happen, but, that's our job, is to let bad stuff from happening. But you can't do that by excluding everything.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
but I just don't think our definition of flex space is correct. Or how
Is this-
I understand
Is
it.
this,
You
how
understand
is
it?
this,
No.
how is this flex space defined in other cities?
Read this one right here.
Well, I know,
It's very
In
similar
other
to this.
cities.
The other, Boise doesn't have it, Meridian has a really good one. And you're seeing a lot more of this showing up in Meridian, but it's very similar to this. It's really just to allow really light industrial, uses, into more commercial areas. They're not, so that somebody's custom cabinet making shop doesn't have to be next to rural steel. So this is very typical. I can understand, I was like, I think it'd be some crazy young professional that would be like, oh yeah, I'd love to live next to this stuff in mixed use, So I thought, well, throw in the option in case, but also it is troublesome to have light industrial that close to a living arrangement, so. I don't think you're far off at all to say it's not appropriate in mixed use.
Well, and I agree with him at the same time, but it depends on what is flex space? How do we mitigate what flex space is? How do we put a leash on it? We're the city, right? We work for the city, the people of the city, that's our job. I don't wanna just say, oh yeah, that sounds great,
Well,
there's light industrial in there,
what
and
do
then
you
there's no rules, there's
suggest
no,
You have
it's
to suggest something. The suggestion here is, it's a building with enhanced elevation up front.
Mhm.
It does light warehousing, distribution in the rear, or manufacturing, light processing, but it can't do more than 70%. And it should not look light industrial. It should not look light industrial. So that's the definition, but how do you want to improve that?
Do we have a definition for what is light industrial? Is that in the code somewhere?
Light industrial, is not in our code, but generally accepted is light processing. It's heavy manufacturing is like rural steel. When you're out there making.
light
a lot of
industrial,
noise.
meat packing, places that you come in to make an order, right? If I go into whatever meat packing plant and they have a nice office up front where there's a reception, and I'll go in and talk to them. Or tile outlet is a fine example of light industrial. Walk in, they have little displays showing me what tiles they have, what they can do, their sink stuff, they have a reception area.
So
And in the back, they're like cutting in.
So not a
granite
lot of
countertops, right?
noise,
Yeah, but
dust.
I don't see, your two examples, I don't see the problem with being next to residential. Cause they're kind of retail in the front, and it just, they're putting all their retail stuff together in the back. So, I think that's fine. If that's what we're talking about. I mean, if we're talking about something like rural steel being in there,
somebody's
that's
industrialist.
different, but I mean, your two examples, I think, fit perfectly with flex space.
If somebody's an industrialist, does that mean that they're actually manufacturing something, or is industry like
Uh,
a big box store, or,
No.
I mean,
Industrial is gonna involve a lot of noise, a lot of dust, activity, trucking,
yeah.
chain link fence kind of.
So So I don't
Just-
know if we're getting.
So we can move on, and you can take back when you get back to your discussions, after you mull it over a little bit more. Okay, so whenever you put a brand new use into the code, and you got it in the land use table, you also need to do a parking requirement for it. And so, flex space parking, one stall per 350 square foot of gross floor space. And that's kind of just the middle ground. Industrial uses need very little parking style. Maybe for a handful of employees, because the public doesn't come to them. But a commercial use or a restaurant needs a lot of parking. So I just kind of cut it in the middle. Just between the two types of uses. There's no art to it. A lot of it's just common sense. But we do have to define parking. All right, are we ready to move on to mobile truck service, food service? Okay. So again, we have to define this new use because it's not in our code, and then we need to drop it into the use table. So first we define mobile food truck service is defined, proposed, a vehicle or readily portable structure used solely for the purpose of preparing and selling food and beverages to the public at large. They're a vendor. Food trucks used for catering a single event for pay is not included in this definition. A lot of caterers have trucks, and they might pull up to you can have a wedding in your backyard, they'll pull their truck up. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about somebody who parks and vents to the public at large, day after day or consistently. So then we drop it into the land use schedule or table. And it's very appropriate in all industrial and commercial zones. So C1, C2, C3, M1, and M2. Also, it might be appropriate in mixed use, even though there are residential components there. Food truck service uses should not be in residential zones in general, as a general rule. Nobody wants to go home and there's a taco truck every night in front of your house. So,
Plus they're
Or
top
maybe
floor.
you do. Yeah, maybe that sounds actually good, so.
maybe
Just
I'm
long as they
wrong.
drive by, drop off the taco and then go.
No, I think like for residential areas, not having a long term, right, which is what we're not talking about, these guys are dropping off. Because I know even in our subdivision, we'll do like a party in the park and have like 15 guys lining up around the park itself to do distribution from a food truck. But
And it'll be a one-time
they're a
event.
one-time thing and then they're out, right?
Yeah, so that's not vending food truck service, that's
Correct.
just a party. So I was going to attach what would be footnote 9 to this, and it will take care of the residential component. So if it's allowed in the mixed-use zone, you might have a bunch of apartments on one end of this mixed-use zone, and then you'll have a little retail strip. So on the other end, for instance. So here I would say that footnote 9 would say this: a mobile food truck in the mixed-use zone cannot be parked closer than 250 feet to the nearest residential unit. So it might move into the mixed-use project, but it needs to stay over in the commercial area. It can't get close to the apartments or the townhomes or whatever residential unit
And we're
is
only
there.
talking about long-term, more than one day.
Or anybody, a food truck that's coming there to vend to the public at large needs to stay away from whatever residential units are in that mixed-use zone. At least 250 feet, which is,
But we're not specific in this saying that it's only for a one day.
the definition takes, you mean when somebody hires it for a party?
Right. If I
But
personally hire for my house and he's parked out front of my house, he's well within 250 feet of other residents.
That's not food truck service. That's you hired somebody to help you with the party.
And that's why, so I
not food
said,
truck
we're only
service.
talking about
Food truck service,
long-term, more than one day.
yes,
Yeah, so
Or
we're,
somebody that
More than
drives
we can.
around
what's,
and
yeah, what's the
parks.
definition
yes.
of
So is there any
when he has to be
permits that are
250
attached
feet
to
away? What's
this?
our timeline?
Is there
Does it
what?
have to be 250?
What do they have to do?
What if it's 200 or 150? How far do you wanna walk for your truck?
Okay, so,
Are there any permits that people have to apply for to be able to fit in this category here? We
Yeah.
don't just want willy-nilly people just driving around our city, probably.
food trucks, and Jenna can actually speak to this better than me, but food truck vendors do stop by City Hall and get a permit to be here.
And do we have people out, like policing that, stopping and asking for their permit, and are you allowed to sell in city limits?
Well, the city's pretty understaffed for that, but I mean, if somebody had a problem or thought there was something awry, they would call our code enforcement officer.
It's a
But we
commercial
don't make a habit
enterprise,
of,
it's a commercial enterprise within the city.
it's just a commercial use. And, but they wanna sometimes come and go to residential places, they're calling more and more, actually. And that's why we're having to get it into our code, and, so we need to define where you can be.
Yeah,
For more than 24 hours.
Yeah, to vend.
Okay, like we gotta put a timeline on it too, because if the ice cream truck pulls through at Middleton PD, throws him out of my subdivision, I'm gonna be angry. Cause he's just riding around with his bell going on, right? Like, what's our timeline on vending versus public, just distributing? I don't understand.
There is none. If you want to recommend that it be put in there, then that'd be part of your motion.
I think it should be during daylight hours, common daylight hours, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5.
What about dinner?
When
oh
permitted,
yeah,
right?
common restaurant hours.
Right. So like
Not
7 p.m.
daylight.
Well, the ice cream guy's not gonna pull out in our subdivision at 7 p.m., right?
Well, but I mean,
So,
Summertime, yeah.
summertime, yeah, cause it doesn't get dark till 10.
Yeah.
The ice cream guy out on Sunday.
Yeah, and in fact, that is troublesome. That is the ice cream man is,
He's a vending machine.
he's a
Yeah.
food truck
He's a
vendor.
food truck vendor. So
Yeah.
we're not putting, we're not gonna, this goes back to the flex thing, even on this one. There's gotta be more, I don't think we have enough understanding of what they're doing or how we're trying to mitigate the trucks. We're focusing on, if we're gonna focus on trucks that are vending for more than 24 hours, that's what we need to put in here. If you're gonna be parked in one spot for more than 12 hours,
or is it just a
Or-
mobile food truck?
or is it just the fact that you can go
It's
drive
on
around and
roofs.
I stopped by City Hall, got my vending permit for the day, and now I'm gonna go take my 12 hours. But I can't go 250 feet through a residential spot, I'm not even gonna drive into a subdivision, where am I gonna go? I don't think we're
Well,
defining our. we're
We
giving
can
our
even take it out of
definition.
MU, by the way. You can remove this A in MU, and it's just strictly prohibited, because there's residential there. That's another option.
Well, they need to be able to go there,
for the
Okay,
next-
right?
Well-
We can't cut the ice cream guy out of the apartment complex. That's how we end up with Harlem,
I know.
just saying.
A lot of angry kids.
I know, okay. Let me finish, footnote 9 also has a second component, and it would be, a mobile food truck service, which is generally not allowed in a residential zone, is allowed, will be an allowed use at any school, which are all in residential zones, or the public parks located within a residential zone when tied to a specific event at the school or the park. So this will take care of the end of school or the October fest, and they bring in, one-day events, or the the Middleton Market. It'll take care of those kind of things, at parks or schools. Otherwise, they need to stay out of residential zones. Nobody wants the taco trucks running through their neighborhood, generally. Not nobody, most people.
Right, unless they're invited there for a party. That's what I'm saying, where are we describing that?
People that don't own
It's right
apartments
there.
running
I
around.
could use the taco truck right out there right
Because
now.
it's, when it's tied to a special event.
So only schools and public parks can have a vendor?
Well, no, the definition says it's catering a single event for pay, it's not included.
That is not food truck service.
Right,
Yeah,
okay,
so
that's what I'm like,
that's it right there.
I see the
Yeah.
definition,
That's it. So
Okay.
if you invite them to your neighborhood,
And you
Then they
pay
can be
that
there.
is a single event for pay,
Mhm.
and they're not
Right,
included in this
and they're not
definition.
included in this
Okay.
definition. Same thing here, when they're tied to a specific event at the park or at the school, they're not in this definition. Or they actually can,
They can find, that's the one
Yeah.
exception,
yeah,
if it's tied to a special event, at a school or a park only.
But that's
I
still
think
gonna
it's
be a
that.
specific event, right?
Lawyers in an
Yeah.
office. All they do.
It's very similar, yeah. But it's just protecting a residential neighborhood, the peacefulness of a residential neighborhood. You don't want somebody conducting a business in front of your house.
yeah,
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to,
yeah, I
I'm
think it's
trying to,
there.
like,
Yeah,
wait,
I
what
think
about the
it's
ice cream
there.
guy, we're talking about food vendor.
He's a food vendor.
He is a food
He
vendor, but
is,
he's
I was
only
kinda
gonna be
sad,
what?
he's also Americana, I mean, I didn't think about that, but. Yeah.
This is Jenica. Currently, the ice cream man has to get a vendor solicitor's license permit from the city. So, the only time that we currently have food truck vendors getting permits, it's for the Middleton market or to be able to be in Piccadilly Park and to sell their food at Piccadilly Park. Currently, Piccadilly Park is the only place outside of privately owned businesses that you can get a food truck vending permit. The ice cream man gets a vendor solicitor permit to be able to drive through residential neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's a little, but that's good information.
But yeah.
A little bit of a twilight zone there with the ice cream man. So we got another question. So here's our zoning map. And so when I dropped in allowed uses in all the commercial zones, you can see up there, and also under M1 and M2, which are residential, and then mixed use. Also, there's a zone called AR, agricultural residential. There's only 2 zones currently in the city. It's what will soon be Riverwalk Park down by the river and Piccadilly Park. So I put, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, it's up to you guys to decide this, allowed use in the AR zone. So that I can see on summer days, food trucks can just go down to the Riverwalk Park and in Piccadilly Park. But the fear I have is that Piccadilly Park in general, someone would just literally go there and just park there day after day and begin running a hardcore.
So that should be a moment where they, just like the ice cream man, have to stop by the city hall and get their permit soliciting. If they're not scheduled event, they're going there to sell, they're vending, right?
It's
They're
basically-
vending.
They're gonna wanna sell someplace where they have volume.
So if
So
they
they
wanna
can
go
have
to
volume in an ant.
And I don't want the
Big
parking
park.
lot at Piccadilly to be just like 16 trucks, because the zoning says they can be there, then we can't say no. So I'm thinking I probably need to remove that A off of the AR. But,
I think they should still be able to go down to the park, right? Have a designated area, but they should still have to stop by City Hall and
Get a
say,
permit.
hey, how many spaces are available? This is something on City Hall, they need to be saying, this is gonna be a public park, right?
yes,
Okay, City Hall, the city's gonna
They'll-
have a
they'll
public
still
park
have to
there,
get
a
a
large
permit.
of a lake, right?
but we
So how
can't
many
tell
spaces
some,
is the city gonna
no,
make available? How many
And
permits
yeah.
are gonna be available per day,
Yeah.
right?
we'd have to.
I think
probably-
that's how the city
Limit the
communicates
permits,
it. Yeah, you limit the number of parking
Limit the
spaces, you limit the
spaces.
number of permits, the city hall mandate controls that, like you wouldn't have that problem, you wouldn't have 16 truck now.
Yeah, I
Unless
think
it was
we
a
might,
special event. So it's
yeah, a
intended.
special event, that's no problem, that's an exception, but, yeah, there just have to be some way to prevent, Piccadilly Park from just, if it's zoned AR and that's a use in AR, we can't tell them no, essentially, other
Can
than
you-
after they get a permit.
Can you put a sign up that says that food vendor trucks must display their permit? So
Exactly,
they,
just
so
stop by
they
City Hall and get
know
the permit, here, this
they're
is your
required to
window
have a
clown.
permit.
Okay.
Well, then just make ARS then too, right?
Special use permit.
Chairman.
Solves the problem.
There you go.
Thank you, Chairman. So currently in Piccadilly Park, there's only a certain area that is allowed for food trucks. And it's right there at the half moon shape right there. That's the only area that allows food trucks. So if that area gets filled up right now, currently, then the food trucks can't be there. They can't extend along the parking over by the splash pad. They can't do that. They can only be in that specific area of Piccadilly Park.
So that's actually really good information.
So they're limited by the space, right?
Right, I think
We're
there's,
talking about something different when you open that large lake, right?
Yeah,
Okay, stuff because my son owns a truck vending company, that's what he does. He does like cheesy sandwich things right down there. He's basic out of the truck, right? I never hire him for anything because he's my kid. He doesn't deserve it. But
Because it's what?
because he needs to work, right? But I know the tendencies of them. If they could park 2 trucks there, they'll park 2 trucks there. Hey, Bobby, this is Scott. Hey, Scott, this is Bobby. What are you doing? Hey, I'm gonna put my pickle truck next to your cheese truck today. Let's put them in real close. We'll back them in so we can serve out each side. They'll work together and they'll do that. So even though you think this space is filled up, they will find a way to put as many trucks in there as they can. They're gonna do the same thing at the whatever the big park is.
Yeah, it could get out of control, that is a
So if
concern.
you limit the spaces, you make a special use permit for certain areas, you make them have to check in with City Hall every day before they can go out to their vendor spot. And 2, that's gonna create what's called, what's that word you gotta rate?
Desire,
Right? You're creating basically
market.
the race for success. You own the market now and who gets to go there. The guys that are there at 8 o'clock in the morning to pick up their permit to be there, those are the guys who are gonna get it, right?
And
Doug,
speaking
did you
of
wanna
the
say
special,
something?
the
Go
food
ahead.
truck permit, is that $35 a year, or is that a day or a weekend?
I mean, there's opportunity for the
35
city
a
to
year
make
seems
money.
really cheap.
It's
From what I heard.
$35 for the year.
Yeah,
Thank you, Jenica.
that seems really cheap,
Okay,
So,
my opinion.
Mr. Attorney, please speak.
this is not, does not give anyone permission. It makes it allowed use to use. But just like if it's allowed use to see one zone, doesn't mean the truck will park on some property. So, if, I don't think that any of these should be an S unless you want to have permanent truck. Somebody wants a permanent truck in any other zone, so you have a special use permit. They're parked there all the time. But they still are gonna be obliged to get permission to city to park on city trucks. So, if, I think the question is, do you want trucks at all on the if the answer is yes, great. The only person who could apply for a special use permit for food trucks in the area is the owner of the property, the city. That's it.
Right.
So it's either, there's no reason to do that. So for the area in particular, it can be an A or B blank. And then also, just as an aside, you can't support, we can charge the permit fee, cost of administrative fee, and maybe that needs to be higher than $35, but we can't use, the city cannot use fees for revenue generation. We can only cover our costs. That's what the law says.
So-
Right, but that cost.
So what you're saying-
Damage to the parks and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Based on the food trucks.
It's covering administrative costs.
Right.
If there is an active cost the city is incurring against what they're doing, you can absolutely cover it. So if there's a well, if they're damaging the park,
Yeah.
that's separate.
Well, I mean, if they want hookups, if they want to, if there's, I'm just saying, like, if they had water, power, sewer, instead of running generators, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You could charge for that, because that's
Yeah,
your
yeah.
infrastructure they're using.
The amount that it costs.
So the changing back, the A versus the S in this just constitutes its ability to be
To
in
be
that
there.
space, but it doesn't change, it doesn't control the number. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that if the city changes, well, so Piccadilly's they are, right? So let's say this goes into effect as draft, the admitted use, right, accepted use of food trucks in the area. That doesn't mean that tomorrow food trucks can drive to the park. Because
It just
it's
means
not
that
their property.
they physically can be there
Yeah.
by our code.
Right, it means they're not prohibited, so then they'd have to go ask the owner of the property.
Which is
the city,
us.
like we've talked about, for permission to be there. Right now, the city has some procedure in place that there are more trucks than the county code of property to govern.
I
But
think that's what's missing, is what is the procedure? Other than me just saying, yeah, you could be there.
It
And
probably
that's city
doesn't-
admin
yeah.
stuff.
So it wouldn't be in the code.
What I was getting concerned about, though, I didn't understand it exactly, because Piccadilly Park is public property, I was concerned that, yeah, they could just all go in there, once they got their permits and be there, because it's public property, they don't,
there's, is there, let's see, what is the zoning district?
this building is, actually C2.
So, but it's C2, so there's lots of lot, but someone can't just post up the parking.
Yeah.
And start it,
Yeah.
if it's allowed. The city still controls the park.
Yeah, Okay, I understand that better now, you're right. So there's, and then that, all those problems that you're raising, those are handled on the backside with staff, administrative staff on.
So tomorrow if I walked into City Hall, or I pulled my truck up on a Piccadilly and started vending,
You have
and if I didn't ask City right now, what could you bring me as a driver of that truck to show me why I can't be there?
Please, trust.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
If this was code right now, and I could pull up and show you, hey, this is an acceptable area for me to be here, what can you show me that I'm wrong?
Making it an accepted use does
It's
not
outside
grant
of the scope
permission.
of what we're talking about, isn't it?
It just doesn't give anyone permission
Sure.
to be there, so.
No, it is, I mean.
The
There's
person-
no leash
we're-
on it.
We're deciding whether it can or can't be there.
I'm putting a rabid dog in the park, right?
I think it's an
I
administrative.
don't get it.
I
You
get
need
it.
a permit for
The
that.
city owns the property, and so the city, at the police department, at the direction of the city, the thing that shows you can't be there, is you have to tell me you are.
Yeah, do you,
You're not
can you
right.
produce your permit? You can't produce your permit? Okay, you don't have a right to be here. You have to leave.
I'm just saying, if there's something in place that shows me I have to have a permit, I don't know if there is or not. If I park there and start vending and the officer comes and tells me, where's your permit? Do I need to have one?
Yes,
Okay, where? I guess would be, as long as they know that, as long as there's a way for them to say, you have to have a permit.
and it's in our fee
here's why.
schedule,
Okay.
it's publicly noticed, and so that fee will be charged and the permit will apply.
I think every city is dealing with the same thing and has rules that are governing food trucks.
And this is
So I
just to
think it's-
protect, one of the reasons we need to get it in our use tables to like protect residential areas too. So you could clearly go to the code and say, you don't have a right to be here, this is prohibited use in residential zones. We do need to get it in here and address it. So, okay, that's good information, and you might wanna circle back around when you do your motion. So the last little bit of cleanup, this is the last change. A few months ago in 2021, City Council, and at your recommendation, had expanded the notice area for neighborhood meetings from 300 feet perimeter boundary to 500 feet. So you'll notify more people of an upcoming application. And at that time, I didn't clean up the part where the city gives the same notice right before a public hearing. And so this is just to get my notice that I have to give from 300 to 500, just to make them consistent. So you can, any change to a city's zoning ordinance or a subdivision ordinance must be in compliance with the city's comprehensive plan, and that's from LUPA, the Idaho State Statute. Planning staff finds that all proposed changes are in compliance with the comprehensive plan because nothing proposed is in conflict with requirements shown on any comprehensive plan map. Additionally, none of the proposed changes conflict with any goals, objectives, or strategies set forth in the comp plan. And none of the proposed changes conflict with the requirements of LUPA, the state statute for land use planning. No comments received from surrounding landowners, no comments from agencies. Notice was given appropriately, and it's up there on the screen. The pertinent codes are up there on the screen. The Planning and Zoning Commission should base any decision on recommendations or general facts or findings of facts and conclusions of law. Planning staff has set forth above findings that the proposed code changes do not conflict with the city's comprehensive plan. As to conclusions of law, planning staff finds that the commission has the authority to hear this application and to approve or deny the application. Additionally, planning staff notes that all public notice requirements were met. Planning staff further set forth the portions of the Idaho State Code and Middleton City Code to be considered in making a decision tonight. If the commission wants to recommend approval of the proposed code changes, planning staff does not recommend any conditions of approval.
Any questions for staff? We've had plenty of open discussion portion. This is a public hearing, so I'm gonna walk through the steps real quick, just so we're still in compliance with the fact that it is a public hearing. In this case, the application was the city of Middleton, who also gave us the staff report. We currently have no questions for the applicant, so I will open the public comment portion at 9:20 p.m. Mike Grave. You really have anything to say this time?
Can you wake him up?
I was gonna say, I'm calling you as soon as you get home.
What happened Sunday?
What happened?
Right? Different story. It's already 9:20.
Still learning.
Mike Grave, 1889 Ridgeway. I'll be buried in one of these. And I either got my train of thought. I don't know. In listening to this guy, good discussion. But I think you guys are opening a can of worms here that you're never gonna get a lid on. And I might be wrong. There was one thing that was somewhat upsetting to me, is all kinds of cities are doing it. Boise, Meridian, and I heard Portland. I really don't give a rat's whatever about Portland, Oregon. And I certainly do not want Middleton, Idaho to, if they're doing it, don't do it. Because it ain't working out real well for them. So I guess that's all I gotta say. I like the conversation and the discussion and stuff like that. That's what we need. And you gotta have different viewpoints. You're doing a good job on that, but don't mention Portland in here again, please.
Thank you, Mike. Lori Smith? Okay. You did.
John might not even have been on that, but you signed before.
Okay. I'll now close the public comment portion at 9:22 PM. Discussion commission.
I think they all make sense. I'm okay with them as is.
I think there needs to be some leashes, but it could be just how I'm, right? Could be how I'm viewing it. I know that if this were something I presented at my current level, it would never float again. There would be more whole shot in this than I could possibly even adventure to present again. And I only say that because I don't think anyone on the commission, I'm sure maybe actually so there's a couple of developer guys, right? You guys understand building a prospect and understand far better than I do. But I don't think flex space is properly identified. I don't think the definition and purpose to me didn't make sense. But I understand the concept of a flex space being, if it's industrial, great. If it's something that you guys feel would be in a mixed use area and would still prosper in a mixed use area and wouldn't be detrimental to the living of, we talked about peace and tranquility of the residential area, and we're talking light industrial inside the residential area, but peace and tranquility, all of those things put together make no sense to me. It doesn't make any more sense. I've lost the concept of what flex space should probably be. Sorry, there's a big bug flying around my face. Little bug. It was little, but it was this close. So right?
Perspective.
So I think if we're adding all of those things together, flex space is no longer properly identified, defined for me. The understanding of it is just not there. And that's just like part of my discussion for that. The rest of it, I think with the food trucks, right, food trucks are gonna be one of those things, like it's a crapshoot either way. We can start putting all kinds of, but if there's not some type of enforcement, if there's no code enforcement, right? We don't have enough cops to do that kind of stuff, to run around and check food trucks all the time, right? So if we don't have something in black and white that is no BS, this is how a food truck operates within my city, then we don't have anything to stand on. And the only way we're gonna define that, the only way we're gonna get that is to actually try it. That's one of those things, like, you're gonna have to throw a ski, everything you can find, right? But until you attempt something, we're not gonna find the holes in that. Those are as far as my discussion, that's all I really got. Like, I don't think the flex space thing is defined well enough for in my opinion, to make any choice or decision on that,
Well,
but
we're just recommending to city council, so we can add that in our recommendation.
my
that we
recommendation
feel
would be
like-
actually sit down with city council and do a workshop if you wanna understand the definition of this. If city council is just as confused as I am, one member of city council is just as confused as I am on what a flex space truly is, we have not done our due diligence.
Could I add something? I mean, first, I apologize, Mike, that was only meant to be, we moved here from Portland, so I can tell you, I totally agree with you. But the way I see it, take the details and put it into a high level. Here in Middleton, we need to have industry commercial. We need it. And we need to have a welcome mat and a place for them to do it. If we limit what it is that we offer, I think we're doing that community and ourselves a disservice.
But your understanding, go ahead, I'll let you finish.
What I meant earlier by my discussion of flex space is it's an option. It is something that people can utilize to build a business, an industry, or whatever you want to call it. That is something that we need to have. And so I know that it is becoming common because it is popular with the surroundings, with the neighbors. It is not just to throw something in a space, it is that it's appealing. It is a business, or excuse me, it is a welcome mat for people to bring their business into an area. Absent that, they don't come. So, to your point though, defining it, I don't see anything really wrong with this definition, because I think it's gonna be utilized for what it is that it's stating. We can go into all kinds of examples, all kinds of, rabbit trail examples, and no offense, I don't mean it offensively. I'm just saying there's just a lot of different options that you can do at any time. We also have the ability to change things if it doesn't work, or if it is ambiguous, or people come back and say, what does this mean? Then we can always come back and revisit the language. But from what I see here, I read it, I don't see a lot of ambiguity, but I also, that's not my expertise. So, to the food trucks are very popular.
Yep.
But to policing them, I think the way I see it is our obligation here as a code is to say you can be in this space or not. When they get the permit probably has the conditions of what they need to do with that permit. Whether it's to be in the truck or whatever, it has to be posted. I think what you're talking about is very important, but I think it needs to be on the permit itself and not the code. Because every time something changes, you're gonna have to change the code. And it's a lot easier to change permit than it is to change the code. But it is important, what you're saying is absolutely, I was thinking the same thing. You can just have some guy drive up and nobody be the wiser. Burrito A versus burrito B, you'd never know. So there has to be a way to display that permit and make it a visible thing for anybody driving through. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, my only additional comment to the flex space is the way it's described, and if the intention is industrial, right? You keep putting commercial and industrial together, which I agree with, commercial and industrial
That's
should
only
be
because we
available
have
in
to
mixed
have
use.
both. I'm not talking about that in terms of rule, I'm talking about in terms of community development.
And if you had both, then it would be flex. If the term industrial reports to flex, it's not flex, it's industrial. That's all I'm trying to say. Like, we can't use the term flex and say it's gonna be industrial, because it's not industrial.
Well, so the
We
definition
might need a food
is,
truck if we want to.
yeah, the definition is a building used for small-scale warehousing and light industrial activity combined with office, retail, and other commercial use. So the definition doesn't say light industrial.
However,
It says
the
light
intention
industrial,
was industrial.
well, but I mean, the definition itself doesn't say that. So it says, it literally gives us a list of,
And I agree with you.
Things,
That to me is what
right?
flex is. But if
Right.
the intended purpose is industrial, why are we calling it flex?
but if the code says this, it doesn't matter what the intended purpose is, because the code says that.
So how do I enforce that
'Cause the
on
code
an
says
S
that.
with a special use permit in mixed use?
Hey, and if mixed use is
Where-
S, how come C1's not S?
Here's the thing though, is we would just be approving a building, we're not approving tenants going into a building.
Correct, so we once we say yes to this, and it's allowed in those spaces, we no longer have control. So we're saying, oh, go ahead and use it for industrial, now in a mixed use spot, because we said it was okay, based on the code. We have no leash.
Well, they're not using it for industrial, they would be
Okay,
using
so
it
then what do you
for
recommend?
light
I don't
industrial
know.
office.
That's what I'm saying.
So-
Maybe-
I
maybe
like
the
the
workshop
idea
would
of
be a good
ending
idea.
of a workshop to define what mixed use is.
See if we can.
So I
get-
understand what you're saying, I'm
So
just
think
saying, once we say
motion
yes,
it- I think we motion it to city council and just let them know, we feel like maybe that the definition could be fine tuned a little bit. And it's up to them to
Both the
approve
language
or,
and the table.
you know, just let them know, here was our concerns with this.
our concern is that the definition is not clear enough. And the intent behind the flex needs to match the description.
Do you wanna do that, or just say we need to discuss it as it relates to the table?
I think we need to approve or deny. I don't think we get to ask for a discussion. I mean, we can
do,
approve or
actually. So
deny, and then we
I
could.
was approached by the mayor that anything and all of those things, if we want to have a discussion with city council or direct with the mayor, that I have to email him directly and we will have that discussion.
Does this fall
So
into
instead
that?
of, no, because normally I turn around and go, Roberta, this is what we want, right? Well, it's not Roberta's job to do that, right? So normally, I was accepted this as the chain of communication, right? That's not the chain of communication. The chain of communication is now from me directly to the mayor or to directly to city council.
But tonight, you need to not ask for a workshop, you need to recommend, either approval or denial, or say approval with,
These
the
conditions.
exception that the definition be tightened in such and such manner.
So that I think the definition
just
needs
giving
to
them
match the
advice.
intention.
Yeah,
I think that's the easiest way to say it. The definition needs to match the intention of
Because I
flex.
think we need it, but I think what we're talking, Roberta said, is we accept it based on, or not based on, with the following condition.
Right.
That whoever, mayor, city council, body, get together and fine tune the definition. And the table, the land use table.
Agreed.
Does that work?
Well, they can do what they want, right?
Yeah, they can tell us to kick rocks.
Yeah.
Their city council, but
So I think that's all you can do, is just make a recommendation that we approve it with the condition that the definition will be tightened up a little bit.
The definition and the land use table.
yeah, so for me, it would be definition, land use table, and intent. And the only reason I add intent is because if we intend it to be just industrial, then there's no purpose in doing the definition any more than it is.
But I think what you say
But
is
if the
fine.
definition is
Except I
gonna
would just put in there to make sure it's just that section you're talking
determine what
about.
you can do.
We're accepting all the other,
Definition and intent match, then we're perfect.
we're accepting all the other changes that have been proposed. It's just that
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
need to have further.
So as far as the
Right.
land use table, the definition, which is the same as intent, I'm agreeing with you. I just think the verbiage needs to say this is the definition and intent, right? If I give you a mission without purpose, right? That's totally different. Hey, check the mail. You just run out there blindly. If I tell you to go check the mail because I'm looking for this specific thing in the mailbox, then I give you mission, intent, and purpose. If I just have a definition of go check the mail, I haven't done you the correct service. I haven't given you a full mission brief, a mission capability of what you're gonna go do.
So are we good with that language?
I agree. Definition and intent,
Let's do it.
right? That's mission and purpose,
Let's give it a wrap.
Yeah, let's wrap this up.
and, land use. Okay, I'll take a
So,
motion, however you guys wanna
think at this
verbalize
point it's
all the junk we
semantics.
threw in.
Are we gonna do just one motion, or do we
Yes.
have to do two?
So we could, this is number 6 in order, right? So under public hearing, the application by the city of Middleton for the amendment and revision to the following. First, we have to do the other two things. Findings and facts, I move we approve the finding and facts, understanding that we are presented something by the city who has presented us also a working document to understand. So I recommend approval of findings and facts.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? None. As far as conclusions of law, we understand we have the authority to hear this based on the presentations provided to us and the application itself in that description. So I also recommend approving the conclusions of law according to this public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Didn't you just make the motion?
I made the motion.
Second.
And a second? And now I will take a motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, now I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion as you state.
Okay,
Please
so
read it again.
we are making the approval for the application we are recommending approval of the application by the city of Middleton for the amendment and revision to city code 1-31, 4-511, 5-41, table 1, and 5-4-4 with the conditions
Recommendation.
that for the term flex, the definition, the land use table itself, and the intent are ironed out through either discussion or approval through city council. Either they approve it with this
You wanna
as it
say,
sits.
You were just
you wanna say
making a
flex
recommendation
space.
Yeah, we are making a recommendation to
that
city
they
council
tighten up the definition.
that we approve with under the conditions that the definition, land use table, and intent of flex space
In the mixed use. So,
through all zones focused on mixed use be addressed either through a workshop or communication of some sort by email. The food truck vending, as well as the food truck vending verbiage second portion of that, we're just recommending approval of how the current vending for food trucks,
as stated.
as stated, is entered into code. For those of all out loud that heard that, did that make sense? Or was I throwing spaghetti at the wall?
Doug, what,
Fine, recommending approval. Vote.
Reflect.
Particular for
Mixed use,
direct.
vending,
Sounds good to me.
okay.
Yeah.
So that was my
was
motion,
clear
as long as people understood what it was.
So you're making a motion then?
You said you'd make the
Okay,
motion
I'll
as I read it,
I'll make the
right?
motion as you have stated, or
That is-
as the attorney has stated.
The motion from Commissioner Christiansen. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none, decision is unanimous.
Chairman Wolfman, who was the second?
Croft,
Thank you.
Mr. Croft was the second. Okay, I now close this public hearing at 9:39 PM.
Wow.
Wait till I use the hammer, it's so loud it like makes my ears wanna bleed.
you should put too much words on it.
I bet.
Just got to.
All right, so, As far as public comment goes, I will open the last portion of public comment. There's not many people here. This is a part, again, which is not public comment like it is when we have a public hearing. This is an open discussion portion. We're gonna hear from the public and do the best we can to answer the questions, take praise or any backlash that we come as, and use it as a learning experience. So at this moment, I will open the public comment portion at 9:40 PM. Lori Smith.
Thank you. Lori Smith, 10079 Riverbend Place in Middleton. I have some questions on the urban development, urban renewal development. Is it possible to get that map?
The map is, the current maps that we saw up here, even the hard copy ones, are on the city hall, on the website.
Yes.
We can
They are on the
use these
website.
here.
Yeah.
Okay, it was page 133. Anyway, my questions concern that the boundaries for the development, urban renewal development zone contain city and county property.
Yes.
That is correct?
Yes.
Okay. Some of what properties are in that zone have already been approved. The plat has been approved, the developer's been, all that's gone through. Does being in that zone now change any of that?
No. So the way urban renewal works is urban renewal is its own agency.
It is.
It is its own agency,
Okay.
okay? So because it is its own government agency, it is funded differently, and it can use those funds in order to develop infrastructure of the areas that it can monitor. There's no control of those areas, because it can select applications and people apply, just like through a government agency, right? Because it's its own government agency. They apply for assistance through urban renewal.
Okay.
And then urban renewal can use funding that they have in order to help develop infrastructure. They can't make a new building, but they can help water, sewer, power lines and stuff like that run to and help entice those businesses or residents that need that assistance.
So if the plat has already been approved and the developer's ready to go and already said he's going to build it,
Mhm.
what is the benefit to the city to put it in the zone? Or does it benefit the developer to get more money?
It benefits the urban renewal, right? Because now they have, currently our urban renewal goes from, doesn't even quite reach Piccadilly Park, and it goes to Rizzi's along Main. That's the only assistance that the urban renewal district can currently provide the city of Middleton.
Okay, so
This
you're
is saying-
expanding it through developments that have already been approved.
Correct, and those terms are coming to end, right? So what happens is, with urban renewal, you have a 20-year window, and at the end of 20 years, it's gone. It's time for a new application, right? So we're closing that window on urban renewal along Main Street, that short distance of Main Street. So,
Now you're taking it past.
so what
almost
urban
up
renewal
to
needs to do is they need to expand their borders as far as they can so that they can support the city in a much bigger footprint.
Okay,
They own nothing. Does that make sense? They are their own government agency specifically designed to support infrastructure.
okay. But the developers that have already been approved don't have to go back to the
No.
new.
No, they still have all their city code that they have to do. That doesn't, urban renewal is not gonna take the burden of them having the city code that they have to do infrastructure, sidewalk and all that. That takes nothing away from them.
Okay, I'm just a little confused
Yeah.
going back to.
So all that, what that would do is then give them the opportunity to other developers in that area to go to urban renewal and ask for assistance to meet the city requirement. There's nothing taking away from the developer. That's still their requirement.
Okay. But in past applications that have come before you and presented and approved, there was a complete delineation between city and county, but now we're combining them.
Because the urban renewal is its own agency. This is all approved, so these plat maps and how they're working, their borders and boundaries, right, are all gone through each county up to the state and back down, and then each county has seen this. They're getting their approval through everywhere before they can say, this is your area you can operate. So yeah, there is no distinction between city and county when it comes to urban renewal.
Okay.
Urban renewal has this area they can work in, and that's already been approved. By the time they get this map, it's approved by all the powers that be.
Those are general questions. My
Okay.
specific question is, in the original plat for River Point, the 75 acres and the 14,
Mm-hmm.
the frontage along State Highway 44 was commercial. That did not show up on the map that I saw in the packet.
Okay,
So
so
what happened to the commercial?
I was gonna say, where's the other maps? Because I think it's still there that way, but the color actually changed on one of the maps. Did she take that?
It was
with her?
on page 133 of your packet, is what I was
I don't
looking
mind
at.
that.
And I don't know which.
I do know that there was a color change in one of the maps, and it was pointed out to you earlier when she brought the maps out. Somebody said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa."
Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah,
This says it's all residential. but
correct.
This, when what was approved was commercial up front.
That has nothing to do with planning, with urban renewal. Those zones have nothing to do with urban renewal. We're using this map in order to show that where the footprint, basically, can I come down there, everybody? So, the zoning is the zoning, urban renewal doesn't do zoning,
Okay.
right? Urban renewal has nothing to do with the zoning. So, this is already so even if this was residential and for some reason it was commercial on the different map, that is not the proposed behind it, what urban renewal is. They don't have anything to do with the zoning. We're basically showing that this is where urban renewal used to be able to work, right here. And this is where we want urban renewal to be able to work.
Okay,
And inside that are these.
okay.
So what that tells urban renewal is, okay, this is industrial, how do I help industrial? Right, that's gonna take different kind of stuff, it could be sidewalks and light poles and parking spaces, right? But if it's residential, I'm probably only gonna do sidewalks, water, sewer.
And internet.
And internet, right? I'm gonna help
Yeah.
infrastructure, internet, cable one, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, but this here is residential according to the code.
Right. So on this map, yes, it shows residential.
But what was approved for the city, the front part of this is commercial. So why is that blue?
Okay, so for your question, is there a distinction in the map differences between the zones? There's a zoning difference.
Yes. This parcel was residential and commercial,
Okay,
but that commercial color coding according to this map is gone.
okay.
I don't, and
So just
I
for
see that too,
clarification,
Deborah.
there's a zone,
I don't know why.
to clarify your question for record, there's a difference in the zoning on one of the maps. However, that zoning, to answer your question, does not pertain to urban renewal.
No, okay, I understand that, but my question is, in this map, how has that been changed, and what
Yeah.
revenue did that,
Okay, so I think one of the things,
avenue took
one of
that
the things
change?
that may have changed the color based on just the plotting is residential mixed use. For that area right there.
Different zoning.
So,
It had commercial uses along 44, but it was still within the mixed-use zone, which is also residential. It's a combination.
mixed use is a residential as well as light industrial. What was the other one we were talking about earlier? Sorry, that whole conversation blew me up.
So real quick, what I think is happening, this is a future land use map, and the categories are few. So, for example, residential, there's only one color for residential. But in zoning, there are many residential zones, R1, R2, R3, and MU is. So, this future land use map has painted in broad strokes. And when it paints in blue, the broad stroke of blue is R1, R2, R3, MU, and I'm not sure
MU.
what else. So, this future land use map, which is not the zone of the property, this is like a planning tool that got overlaid here. It doesn't control what's developed. What controls is what it's zoned. And it's zoned MU. And the other thing that controls is the plat. And
Which shows commercial uses. Lori's right about that.
so
Up front.
then what that means is that this this map has created some confusion by being a little too low resolution in terms of the colors, right?
Okay,
But what will be developed on that corridor, if I'm understanding her
Yes.
correctly, it's platted and zoned. It is
Good question.
Patience and
Good question.
explanation.
Thank you so much. Mike, did you wanna have anything to say one more time?
Quick.
Don't be too quick, you hurt yourself.
Mike Griff, 1889 Ridgeway, Middleton, Idaho. A couple of questions. One, gross acres versus buildable acres. I know it's been presented to city council three times.
I'm sorry, yes.
3 times. Is that alive? Is it dead? Am I just crazy?
I'll answer that for you, Mike. As I brought that directly to the mayor, and after I was redirected to the mayor, it is still a discussion. However, we are going to proceed with the 8,000 square foot minimum until there can be an example of why that doesn't work provided to the mayor. And I don't know how else to explain it other than I'm trying to say, we are currently using the 8,000 square foot minimum, and we're gonna continue to use the 8,000 square foot minimum, even though we are still discussing that it doesn't always make sense, and there's an ethical and moral line that it somewhere gets close to sometimes.
8,000 square foot minimum on lot size.
Yeah.
What if I came to you with a 5,300 square foot lot, and I wanna build a house on it, and my setbacks
Are you doing
Fine,
an,
or
are you
fine.
doing an infrastructure build, or are you doing something that is pre-existing, like we're doing an
An
infill
infill?
project, or are we doing a new construction project?
New construction infill project, let's just make it, it'd be an infill project.
Okay.
And we're making an exemption for that on a 5,300 square foot lot.
Mhm.
That doesn't come out on the minimum of 8,000 square feet.
Correct, because it's zoned something that was prior zone that no longer exists in a zone, and truly didn't exist since 1905.
I understand, but if you go back to that,
Mhm.
that, there was 5 and 12,
Side setbacks.
the side setbacks. And that goes back to 1905. Now I know how they came up with 8,000 square feet minimum lot size. Is you add three to 5 and you come up with 8, and you subtract 4 from 12 and you
Come
got
up with
8. That's where the 8,000 square foot came from. But we're building houses in Toll Brothers as we speak that are on 5,000 square foot lots.
I only wish I could answer how that happened.
Okay, I'm just throwing this out, talk to the mayor or whatever. Setbacks, as I understand, and I'm quite sure I've been told from this meeting and the city council meeting, setbacks are from the foundation.
To where?
Setbacks are from the boundary line to the foundation.
To the foundation. So if you got a 5-foot setback, and you got a house that's 5 foot from the fence, and it has a 3-foot overhang, the overhang is 2 foot from the fence. You wanna see an example of that, drive down Chinden and Black Cat. There's that subdivision going in there.
Actually, I did misstate that. It isn't just generally it's the foundation, but you're right, there is an eave that overhangs. We have an exception in our setback code that the eaves and porticos and porches can overhang 2 feet into the setback.
Okay.
And I
Because
do
I
remember
measured
that
one,
from the
well,
historic
I'm not
house.
gonna get on the roof and measure the eave or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm dangerous on a ladder. But anyway, those are just my questions, and I mean, I come up here almost every meeting, and I'm not trying to be a thorn in your side or any of the rest of that, but I feel I deserve an answer to the
Gross acre question.
gross acre question.
And that-
And one other thing, the meat packing place, is that on or off?
Did it come in yet as a permit? Jim
Has
State?
the building permit been issued, or?
I know we approved it.
I don't think it's been,
Just
Okay.
the design review.
Yeah, I know it's been
Okay.
a long time, we'll have to reapply if you're not doing it pretty soon. Okay.
And,
Okay.
to the,
Thank you, Mike.
when you sent the PowerPoint to me and others, it only had one page of the PowerPoint.
It was just one page and then just verbal discussion on the one example.
No, because it didn't talk much about setback.
No, it was just, to talk about the,
I meant gross acre.
yeah, different ways to look at it, and it was just, does city council have an appetite to change it? And the answer has been, Mike's gotten his answer and the rest have gotten answered, the answer's no.
Well, it wasn't no, it was we are going with the 8,000 square foot for now. That's the answer.
Okay,
So, really quickly, Roberta, to Mike's question about the Toll Brothers, that's because that was approved years and years and years and years and years and years ago under different code.
actually, it's because in 2009, they got a sweet development agreement that gave them all those limited setbacks.
And
I
there was-
haven't seen anything much like it since.
Right, but
And that's
that's
one-
why they're being built today, is from something that was done a really long time ago. We've
During a
since then
terrible
changed our
recession.
code,
Yeah,
and so things that are coming to us now do not fit in that category.
absolutely.
I
At
wish I could
all.
agree with all of that.
But
that's not the
unfortunately,
truth.
that's,
It wasn't in the DA?
So, Coleman Toll Brothers did not originally own that property across the street. That was owned by another developer who failed out, who then sold to Coleman and Toll Brothers, right? So, Coleman Toll Brothers purchased the land agreement. Then they put it on the market because they weren't going to develop it. But because the city at this time did not have the clauses that Roberta has put in, right, that it only lasts for so long, you can only do this much, right? They weren't accepting, it wasn't there. 3 different people have purchased the commercial lot on the corner of Willis and Cemetery, and it's been moved back and forth, and at one point somebody owned the berms and somebody owned the internal side, and then somebody wanted to purchase this because they had to go to that, and I literally had to, because I'm the chairman or the director for our subdivision, right, for our HOA, and I had to track this property back since 2007. Since 2007, everyone I've talked to has no idea who actually owns any of that property, including the city had some errors, right? There were some spaces we couldn't find because it all belonged to Tom Coleman, who then had Tom Coleman Jr. and Tom Coleman Sr. moved to this business, and this guy, and Tom Coleman Jr. actually got purchased by Toll Brothers, sold his business from Coleman to Toll Brothers, and worked for them for a while until he quit. So, how there was a grandfathered plat from 2008 or 9 when all of the property sold in 2017, that's where my questions start happening. So 2017 is when this purchase occurred, and they continued to develop, but they were grandfathered on a 2008 preliminary plat.
Actually, there is a development agreement that does exist, and it has those setbacks in
Is
it.
it from
And
2008 or 2017?
Around 2009, it attaches to the land. It doesn't matter when it was sold and how many times it's sold, the DA applies.
Right, but that's what I'm saying, because the city didn't then have what you put in place
Right.
so far, that's why they were able to get grandfathered on certain plats and setbacks and things that were negotiated with some not so.
But nobody else
Upfront
has
individual.
those
Correct.
sweet
right,
things.
but
So-
that's why he's still seeing stuff
Yes.
built on
From
5,000
way back
square
when.
feet, and there's nothing we can do about it,
Nothing.
except for better in the future.
Yep.
So that's,
Exactly.
but that does answer his question.
Our
That he's been asking.
setbacks on Hayden Homes, down at the bridge, are there any 5-foot setbacks in there?
Yeah,
Those-
that was
yeah,
a little
yeah,
bit
it's
of a
another one of
sweetheart
those.
deal. Not as sweet as Toll Brothers, but that is the other one, and there might be,
Is that Sawtooth?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, those are, I mean, I can touch
yeah.
house to fence.
and that was under Darren Taylor, and I'm not sure the reasons why, but that one got through too. But other than that, nobody
Yeah,
else.
but that would have been a far more recent plot than,
well, it was all
Homes.
platted before and then sold, chunks of it sold off,
Phase 1 is almost 8,000 square feet, but then 2 and 3 is mostly just 5,000.
yeah, so it's all old stuff that just took a
well,
long time to develop.
I don't have stuff in front of me where I could dispute that with you, but I think I'd dispute that with you. Cause I can't, I just.
No, the
can't.
houses are new.
Yeah, I know.
The houses are brand new, but what Roberta's saying is that the development agreement that was attached to that land dates way, way back, and there's nothing anybody
To what,
can do about
217?
it.
Tolman's is 2009.
2008 and 9 is when,
Yeah. And
Hayden Homes, 2017.
But
Yeah, I
Hayden
don't know
Homes
about
didn't
it.
buy it, they purchased that property from the other developer
they
that
bought the
developed
development
everything else.
agreement from who
Yeah,
knows
it was
when.
just another phase of the whole
Mike,
thing that had been developing for a long
Hayden
time.
Homes got reduced setbacks approved at the city council meeting with their preliminary plat. I do not believe there's a development agreement. They got it approved at city council
Was it abnormal?
at the preliminary plat. Yes, it was
It was
abnormal.
abnormal.
Thank you.
Who knows what happened?
Thank you very much, because I know for a
Thank you
fact, as
very
long as
much.
I've been here, new development has not been
Yeah.
altered from city code, not one time.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned
Good
at
night.
All right.
10:01.
Goodness